Hello and welcome to Sensei Podcast. This is Manos Brilakis discussing with leaders in the field of CTO and complex PCI. Sensei means teacher or master in Japanese. The goal of the Sensei Podcast is to help you learn and improve in CTO and complex PCI so that you can become the best that you can be and offer your patients the best possible results. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sensei Podcast. It is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Gabriele Gasparini from Humanitas Hospital in Milan, Italy. Dr. Gasparini has really spearheaded the field. He has done several cases, organized many meetings such as the TOBI and the CTO Live 8. He has written several books, and he has been one of the thought leaders and the best operators on this field. So, Gabriele, thanks so much again for joining us today on the Sensei Podcast.
Hi, Manos, and thank you for inviting me to join this really interesting and exciting Sensei podcast. It's a great pleasure for me to be here.
Thank you. We're excited you are joining us today. And maybe, as I do with everyone, I want to ask, how was your journey about CTO PCI and complex PCI? Did you always want to do this? Did you get the inspiration later on? How did this happen for you?
Oh, well, it was several years ago. I was very young interventional cardiologist. I was 33, more or less. And at the time, I was really interested and also involved in treatment of bifurcation lesion. And at the time, the chief of my cath lab was used to hold a couple of meetings per year focused on complex PCI. It was 2007. And she started to invite this, at least for me, unknown Japanese operator called Masahiko Chai, and to perform CTO PCI during our internal workshop. And nobody in my cath lab wanted to work with him because, he was a man of few words. So they felt uncomfortable working close to him. So, of course, I was the youngest in the cath lab. So each time I had to scrub to work as a second operator during his procedure. And I remember that at the beginning of our collaboration, I was really shy, but the only word he was used to say to me were, "Don't touch my wire." So my initial feeling was, okay, I was quite worried about this new field, but over time I became interested and I started to interact with him. So this was my first step in the CTO journey.
And then did you learn by doing more and more yourself? I know that you come from a rich tradition. The Italian school has been one of the pioneers in getting the CTO techniques. Did you do more cases? After the initial exposure to Dr. Chai, how did you evolve over time?
Yes, of course. As I said, I learned a lot thanks to the opportunity to work and to interact with Masahiko Ochai. Then, of course, Freddy Galassi was another of my mentor because, he was the first Italian interventional cardiologist that started to teach how to perform CTO PCI, exporting the philosophy and the technique from Japan, in Italy, and all around the Europe as well. And at the time, 2007, 2008, there was no algorithm and no proctorship. So the only way that I had to learn was just during this internal workshop that was just a couple of days per year. So I had the opportunity to follow some dedicated CTO meeting, but in Europe at the time we had just the Euro CTO meeting and the CTO summit in Turin. So I remember that at the beginning of my journey in the CTO PCI field, I was attending the Turin CTO summit and I was watching live cases that was performed by one of these monster Japanese operator. And I was really impressed because he was crossing a very tortuous and thin epicardial collateral channel. and my thought was, I will never be able to do this. But okay. Then during the social dinner, there were several master operators, and I was asking questions, but I was using pronoun you and you guys rather than collective we. So Freddy Galassi interrupted me during the discussion, and he said, "Why are you using you and you guys? You are a part of the community, so you have chosen to walk the path and stop feeling like an outsider." So self-identify as a CTO operator was my second step in this a very exciting journey.
And then in terms of your learning curve, you've come a long way, learned many techniques, done a lot of live cases. How do you prepare for your interventions right now? Do you do things different than you did before? How do you plan for your cases, especially the complex ones that you do?
Yes, of course. Currently, my job at the workstation is a little bit different from the beginning, but I more or less do the same thing. I mean, I spend time reviewing the angiography, the basal angiography, in order to make my procedural plan. Because spending time is one of the most important pre-procedural step that can allow to have easier and faster procedure. But I realized that this is one of the most difficult key point to teach interventional cardiologists that are interested in learning CTO PCI, because I realize over time that sometimes they believe that the procedure starts directly in the cath lab with the dual injection, but CTO PCI start with procedural planning at the workstation. This is why a good diagnostic coronary angiography is so important. But as you know, Manos, this is, in my opinion, one of the most difficult things to teach.
Perfect. Now, do you get nervous when you do the cases, especially the complex ones or the live cases? How do you feel when you do these cases?
Oh, this is a good question. I think that currently I'm not nervous before or during CTO PCI, because they are a part of my routine practice and I enjoy them a lot. Then I'm not anxious or nervous before and during CTO PCI. I'm really focused on. But of course, sometimes if you have to perform live cases before the procedure, you can feel some stress. But once the procedure start, I completely focus on the procedure without feeling any stress. But I have to tell you a funny story, Manus. Because several years ago, at the beginning of my journey, the idea of doing a CTO PCI made me very stressed. And the night before the procedure, I had troubles falling asleep. Then I got up early in the morning, and I was used to wear striped socks. This is why during my first successful attempt of a CTO PCI, I was wearing a striped sock accidentally. I mean, so I'm not really superstitious, but it was like a ritual for good luck. So then when I was in the cath lab, the nurses were used to kid me. They were always kidding me, asking me, are you wearing striped socks today? And yes, of course, because we're gonna have a CTO PCI. But currently, I don't care about my socks before CTO PCI.
No, this is phenomenal. As you said, the focus is a key part of this. How do you focus?
Yeah.
Do you play music in the cath lab when you do this? How do you keep your attention? Because they can be long cases. How do you do that?
Yeah, honestly, I would like to have the opportunity to listen music during the procedure, but my nurse staff doesn't allow me to listen to music during the procedure. But during last 5 or 6 years, more or less, I'm I always have someone, some fellow, some student, or some referring physician in the cath lab. So discussing with him or teaching how to do or which kind of guide wires he or she has to select. It's a sort of way for me to keep calm and to stay centered on the procedure and on the patient. And in my opinion, also the help that arise from my nurse staff, it's of paramount importance, because I can feel calm when I have the opportunity to work with them. It's just a little bit different when I work outside my hospital in a different hospital for proctorship, because over time I realized to keep calm even in front of the most catastrophic complication. And my staff know me and know this kind of approaching complication, remaining calm, but they understand completely the situation. Sometimes when I'm working outside, this could be a problem because I keep calm and the staff, especially the nurse, doesn't really be able to understand that something wrong has happened.
Perfect. And speaking of that, complications and difficult cases will always happen. How do you deal with them? How do you deal with the complications, and do you get depressed? How do you handle it?
Well, all of us have chosen to learn a new technique that has place in very difficult situation. I have chosen to help patients with stable, chronic, but often progressive symptoms. So we assessed that the patient risk warrant a high risk procedure to minimize symptoms and to improve their quality of life. So my goal is to help, but at times I harm, of course. And so the question is, what is my risk tolerance to fail? How many times will I allow myself to fail and still get back up and move on this journey? This is the key point, your risk tolerance to fail. So when this complication or with this failure or this, when you fail causing harm, you may have the feeling that you are inadequate or that you are not good enough, and your thinking may lead to you that maybe you should stop this journey. So what I've learned from my complication is that I have to stay centered, and because these feelings are quite predictable, I would be surprised if this wouldn't happen to me along the way. So the most important things that I've learned from my failure is to stay centered, because emotions are not good or bad, they just are, and they can teach you a lesson. So your complication and your failure, each of them can teach you a lesson. So you can feel the joy of success, but you should also know that failure is just around the corner. So you have to hold both, and you don't have to overvalue or undervalue either. And you should stay careful not to let that a failure or a success can overdefine you as a person or as a operator.
Perfect. And do you have any stories that left in your mind, any patient, good or bad cases, where that really taught you a lot?
Yeah, okay. So, in my opinion, I think that I don't have a specific best case ever because, as I said, I think that my best case ever are all of my failures because thanks to my failure, I understood how I react to the failure, of course. And so over time, I became able to accommodate both failing and succeeding. And I have developed strategies to fail safe. And I've learned to recognize maneuver that I was about to do that would have could have resulted in a catastrophic complication. So I've learned and I'm still learning from my failure, but this, of course, took time. Regarding the worst case, yeah, I have a worst case, unfortunately, but even in this case, it teach me a lot because it was several years ago. I was proctoring in a different hospital and it was a retrograde RCA CTO PCI. Everything went easy. Septal crossing, reverse cart in the mid RCA, externalization, and the stenting. And the final result were pretty good. The artery was completely reopened. We just lose a quite big right ventricular branch, but the patient was stable with moderate chest pain. The EKG was normal, so the patient was sent in the ward. I took the flight, but unfortunately, during the night, the patient died because he developed right ventricular myocardial infarction with progressive hypotension that was not responsive to the inotropes. So maybe the only way to save this patient would have been ECMO, but unfortunately, in that hospital, they weren't equipped with it. So since then, I've learned to try not to lose any right ventricular branch whenever possible.
Yeah, great learning point. And I think all of us have had similar cases. Actually, personally had a case of VF arrest after the case is a very similar case to what you describe.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to training, Gabriele, I know you've trained many people, you proctor many people, but how do you structure the training, and what do you think is the most important aspects for someone who wants to train? Is it the talent? Is it the enthusiasm? Is it the manual skills? What makes you most excited for a new operator?
Yeah, maybe it's a combination of the characteristic that you point out. First of all, I think that the most important part that excited much in a student is talent, and then curiosity. But not only talent, but also her or his attitude to learn both new cognitive and technical skills. His or her attitude to work hard, to have zest for knowledge, to be open to new ways of doing things, and to stay and to remain committed. Because once I realized that a student has her or his proper attitude to walk the path, and my feeling is that he or she should become good at CTO, I strongly encourage him or her to keep going on the way. So it's, in my case, it's just a question of feeling. If I have a good feeling, I would be happy to spend time to teach him or her how to become good at CTO PCI. But of course, it took time. So they should not be in a hurry to learn.
Thanks, Gabriele. And what are the things that you find most difficult to teach to the fellows? Is it the wire? Is it the guide? Is it the microcaster?
Yeah, this is a very good question, and I'm really I mean, disappointed about some feelings or experience that I had during the last 5 years, of course, especially during a proctorship, because I realized over time that interventional cardiologists that who are interested in learn how to perform CTO PCI, sometimes they skip some pre-procedural step. I mean, in terms of knowledge of materials and knowledge of techniques, because one cannot learn to do CTO PCI just during proctored session. I mean, there is also self-work to be done between different sessions. And I mean studying books, reading papers, and reviewing also the procedure that have been done with the proctor, and going deep inside the different technical characteristic, for example, of each microcatheter or different guide wires that have been used. And also I realized that, as I said before, it seems that they are in a hurry to learn because they are waiting for me. They are waiting for starting the procedure directly in the cath lab, or they are waiting for having all the information from the dual injection. So they skip the procedural planning, the pre-procedural planning. But they should understand that this journey is not a sprint, is not an end-to-end race, is not a race at all. So I understood that it's quite natural to want to quicken the pace along the way. But before doing that, you should have mastered your current step and ensure that you are moving on a stable ground before taking the next step. So my advice for any fellows or interventional cardiologists that are doing CTO PCI with my support is that they should try to resist quickening the pace for any reason.
Perfect. So good preparation is key, as you mentioned, Gabriele, and that makes perfect sense. Now, you've taken to the next step. You're running several meetings, you're writing on Toby. Tell me, how does that complement, and how teaching people through the meetings has been something that you got the motivation and a lot of work it takes to get it to happen?
Yeah, okay. Several years ago, when I was at the beginning, not really at the beginning of my career, maybe in my career, my journey, maybe in the middle, I was attending a Euro CTO club meeting in Paris with my colleague and friend Jacopo Aurelia, and we realized that at that time, this kind of meeting were held just for not really for just for only skilled operator, but there was a lack in terms of information that the attendees could have received from the meeting. So we decided to create, the ABCTO course starting from the basic, as you did. So this is the most important thing, because if you want to become a CTO operator, you should take in consideration that one of the most important things to become CTO operators is humility. So you should consider that you have to learn a completely new technique, starting from the basics, starting from the materials. I'll tell you a story. I was always interested in understanding different technical characteristics of the device. And when I started my journey, my CTO journey, I realized how deep knowledge of different technical feature of the device was really important for succeeding. So I started to study and to going deep inside the technologies. And I was really surprised and disappointed because my thought was, why at the beginning of my career as an interventional cardiologist, I mean, not like a CTO operator, no one teach me how to select the right guide wires accordingly to the coronary anatomy or coronary lesion. So, but this is not our job. I mean, we are physicians, so we should always to keep in mind who we are. But in the cath lab, we are also handicraftsmen, so we should know differences between all the devices that we are going to use, like a carpenter, I mean. So my effort is to teach my fellow or to teach my colleague that I support to start from the knowledge of the guide wires and the microcatheter, and then moving to understand the different techniques. But if you don't know difference between guide wires, maybe you don't know for example, reverse cart or sliding technique or ADR wire-based. So you should start from the basic. And this is my aim even during our meeting. I always try to find a format that could be interesting for a physician, but also informative and useful for the young interventional cardiologists that want to learn something attending this meeting. And regarding the live cases, I've learned how to perform CTO PCI just watching live cases, because at the time I said there were no dedicated school, there was not yet the concept of a CTO program supported by a proctor. But I've learned a lot from live cases. But the only concern that I have had during the last few years is that the fact that one should not lose sight of the aim of the live case. Namely, they should be informative. They should not be just for show. So sometimes too many live cases in the same session are often less useful for attendees, because switching continuously between different cases may lead that the attendees lose several main steps. And reviewing the fluoro save is not as educational as viewing them in real time. This is in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think you did a phenomenal work on that respect on Toby and the other meetings as well. Now, you've also done a lot of research and published on new techniques, equipment entrapment, use of the radial axis. So you're kind of taking the full 360 degrees and teaching people, also finding the new areas to improve the procedure. How did that happen, and how has that helped you to become a great operator?
Okay, yeah, first of all, I mean, the team, and they provide me great support. But this is not up to me. I was really lucky over time to have had this opportunity to have a phenomenal team that supported me in doing such kind of things. I mean, because of course, if you are involved in very complex procedure, you spend time in the cath lab, then maybe you have to go outside for proctorship or for a meeting and blah, blah, blah. So having a team that can support you, it's a great, I mean, it's a great team to let you to go on also with the research or publishing article, because you can involve some of your fellows, some of your students, or some of your residents. I try always to stimulate, not just to ask. I ask for help, but then I'm going to teach in the cath lab. So this is the right combination to work as a team and then you can have the opportunity also to work in the CAT, to attend the meeting, and to write papers and research.
Now, what keeps you in good shape? A lot of things demands heart procedures, all the research education. How do you keep in shape? Do you exercise? How do you keep your mind fresh and motivated?
You mean in free time, I guess. So this is very difficult. No, okay. Honestly, I love extreme activities and adrenergic activities because maybe I love or I need adrenaline. So when I have time, I love go for climbing in the mountains or free riding as well. This helped me a lot to release the stress. But of course, I live in Milan, so it's a big city, so it's not really possible for me to go for climbing or for free riding in the mountain whenever I want. But I also like running. So I think that early in the morning or late in the afternoon, after a very long and busy and hard day in the cat lab, go for running. It's helpful for me for stress releasing. We are always overpressurized or overcommitted. So you should find some time to have rest or to release stress. I remember that Billie Jean King says that pressure, it's a privilege. I don't know really if I do agree with her, but I'm sure that we are overpressurized, so we need some activities to release the stress and the pressure.
Perfect. And then Gabriele, do you have a favorite book or a favorite movie?
Yeah, my favorite book, non-medical book, is Into the Wild by John Krakauer. And I really love these young guys that maybe because I envy this young guy that was able to run away from the society. So I think that I really love these kind of books because I envy the young this young man. And regarding medical book, this is a tribute to your job. My favorite medical book is Manual of Chronic Total Occlusion by Manos Brilakis.
Well, that's the one you took a big part of, so thank you for that.
Then my favorite movie, definitely Kill Bill. Kill Bill, in my opinion, is one of the best movie from Quentin Tarantino. Then I love Uma Thurman in that movie, and the soundtrack is great.
Perfect. And then, Gabriele, what are you most proud of the many things you have done so far? What are you most proud of, personally and professionally?
Okay, professionally, I'm proud of having the opportunity to help my patient. And if I can say also, I'm really proud of being a self-made man. I mean, at the beginning of this funny interview, I say that when I started my journey in CTO PCI field, there were no algorithm, no proctorship. So I didn't have the opportunity to have a proctor. So I had to study a lot, to work hard, and then over time I became able to do CTO PCI. And if you remember, I said when I was watching this Japanese operator crossing this tortuous epicardial channel, my thought was I've never be able to do this. But thanks to the hard job that I did, I was able. So I'm really proud of being a self-made man. And then, of course, in my personal life, I'm really proud of my family because they have supported me a lot during last 15 years, since from the beginning, of course, especially my wife, because this journey took time. And so you have to balance between your job and your family. So having the support provided by your wife and by your family is really helpful if you want to stay committed. And then I'm proud, of course, of my kids. My daughter is mastering horse riding, and I'm really proud of her. And my son is a phenomenal football player, so I can really be proud of them.
Wonderful. Congrats, Gabriele. Again, great achievements so far. But what excites you at this point? So you've done so many things, but what is the present and the future for you?
Wow, very difficult question. I have been walking this path during last 15 years, and during last 5 years I've been overcommitted. So I don't know how long I will walk the path, but I don't know how long I will. So I don't have an answer to this question. But when I will quit, I definitely would spend time with my family, especially with my wife.
Perfect. So, Gabriele, again, congratulations on many things you have done. If you were to give a few pieces of advice for the new operators, the ones who are trying to start their journey or are in different levels of their journey, what do you think are the most important things for them to do to become expert and great operators?
Humility, of course. Then they should be patient with their self, because, as I say, this journey is not a race. And they also should learn from the failure, and they should also learn over time how they can be able to accommodate failure. But starting from the basic is the first key for become good at CTO PCI.
Wonderful. Well, again, Gabriele, thank you again so much. Congratulations, and very excited to keep working on you and learning from you.
Oh, thanks, Manos. It has been a great pleasure to spend this 40 minutes with you, and congrats for this new, exciting, and very interesting and funny initiative. Congrats. Thank you very much, Manos.
Thank you. Thanks, Gabriele. Thank you for listening to the Sensei podcast.